start with today is a look at who we are and what we're up to. We really have spent the last year looking at Lion as a support network for independent online publishers with a mission to help them build and grow financially sustainable small businesses. We believe that you all are the future and the present of local news with these businesses that directly serve your communities. We took a swing very recently at updating our values on our website as a staff, and we're pleased that our advisory council and our board fully supported this move. You can see those values on the screen. I'm not going to read them out loud, but I would encourage you to head to our website to read the deeper descriptions underneath all of those. We put some thought into that as a group, particularly around the anti-racism and inclusive and equitable representation pieces, which we hadn't had there before, and wanted to put in context of all the other stuff that we do. We feel it's kind of a vital part of our mission at Lion, and would urge those of you with values on your organization's sites to do the same. On the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Annika and Nan. If you head over to Medium, you can read a piece that she wrote looking at the larger local news ecosystem and where we think Lion and you all fall within that place. And Annika, take away the first step in your process here, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, so, over the course of the last year since I started at Lion, I think we're really starting to see an ecosystem emerge for people who are creating new startups. So certainly, there's been a lot of organizations and tools and services that are serving digital news startups, but now we're really starting to see people make concerted efforts toward helping support the creation of new startups, which is really exciting. And so, there's a bunch of different pieces of that puzzle. There's the skill building piece, community building, direct services and tools, funding, and then this other pipeline building part. And so, I think historically Lion's really been in that community building piece. We've started to move into more of the skills building piece. And we're starting to think about how we can connect with other partners in the different, in the other areas of this, the funding, the pipeline building, and the services, so that we can come up with a really comprehensive offering, our existing members and then also to aspiring news entrepreneurs. And that sort of leads into our funnel, which is very much my first pass and kind of best guess at how we as Lion help create more digital news startups that are not only financially sustainable, but also creating meaningful impact in how we learn and share information. So, first of all, a lot of people who are in journalism or interested in the news space, you don't necessarily know what it means to be an independent news publication. I mean, that phrase hasn't necessarily caught on in a really big way. And so we think that's really the top of the funnel, is just introducing more people to the idea of what it means to independently own and operate your own news publication. Then at that point, we think we can help support their thinking around whether they should launch a new startup. It's not for everybody. We totally recognize that. But for those folks who think about it, I think we want to be able to give them the resources to evaluate whether it's a good option for them. Once they get through that point, they think about rapidly prototyping something, then if there's some pickup around it, they think about launching it. And then at that point, which is, I think a lot of where our existing members are, is ensuring that you're on the path to financial sustainability. And then that last stop, again, being financially sustainable and again, creating that meaningful impact in journalism. The next slide kind of talks about how we have broken down our programming around each piece of this funnel. I won't read all of this to you right now. You can check out that Medium post to learn more how we talk about each of these things. But, this is really an overview of the work that we've done over the past year to make sure that we are trying to hit each part of that funnel. And over the course of the next year, we might decide, okay, this is a lot of stuff, right? And maybe we just need to focus on certain pieces of the funnel. But I think it was really important for us this year to pilot a bunch of these ideas and see where the interest is and where the real need is. The last piece of the funnel, that be financially sustainable and have journalistic impact piece, I think we have a lot more to learn about, not just at Lion, but as an industry. And so I'll turn it over to Paivon to talk a little bit about how we're hoping to learn more about that piece with all of you.
Yeah, great. So part of us, Lion, as an organization, to be sustainable is reaching out to funders and partners and organizational allies and bringing on new members. So some of that pipeline building as well. But the way that we talk about how we have impact in the journalism field is by telling your story. And the membership is the most important part. And we are here to support you guys. And so we're looking to collect data, and also really the journalism field doesn't have standardized metrics for sustainability yet. And so this is an opportunity for us to be able to collect data and kind of move that needle forward a little bit, so we're all talking about it in a uniform space. I don't know how long it's going to take, but here's where I need your help. I'm looking for 15 Lions to volunteer to share your impact stories with me. And we're going to get into audience metrics, revenue, organizational structures, things like that. I'm hoping to do that by the end of September for 2019, and then do a comparative data gathering in 2020 to see what kind of impact you have had in your organization, what kind of changes you've had, so that we can learn from you. That's going to help inform our programming, but it's also going to help us to talk about what you guys are doing in the field, and just hopefully the rebirth of local journalism everywhere. So I've got a link here. It is an Airtable form. I can put the link in the, we'll try to put the link in the chat too, so you can click onto that. But you can also just reach out to me later if you decide that you want to take part in this. And we don't have too much to offer, but we do have a dues waiver for 2021 for everyone who participates, just as a thank you for helping us to really understand our membership and where we're going.
We also really want to make sure that folks know about some changes that we did to our membership tier this year. And so we added a new tier specifically for aspiring entrepreneurs. And so if you're a current member and you know someone who might benefit from this, please share it with them. The new membership tier is about half the price of a full membership with pretty much the same benefits. And later this year, we're hoping to be able to launch a mentorship program kind of pairing the aspiring entrepreneurs, folks who have not yet launched a site or have at least a business plan or some sort of MVP, with folks who are already well on their way. So that is a really exciting thing that we have in the works. We also wanted to make sure that our members here know about the next skills series that's available. This one's going to be led by Rebecca Monson with Where By Us, and it's going to be really focusing on designing products with your audience. And so what they'll really focus on is just making sure that what you're creating is actually something that your audience wants and will use. And you can apply by August 24th, so the deadline's coming up. And again, we'll share this slide deck, so you'll have all of these links if you're interested. We also very, very much want to encourage Lion members to get recognition for all of the hard work you're doing in the independent journalism sphere. So last year was the first inaugural Lion Awards, and that was held at the conference, and obviously we can't have an in-person conference this year, so we're doing a virtual awards ceremony on October 22nd. We've extended the deadline by 1 week to August 23rd, and we've added a bunch of new categories as well, and have a really great lineup of judges ready to look at your work. So again, really encourage you to submit your entries for the awards. And then, of course, our shameless plug here at the end, which is to sign up for our weekly Lion newsletter that comes out on Thursdays, which has a lot of these opportunities and reminders for deadlines and things as well. To follow us on Facebook and Twitter, to sign up for our entrepreneurial journalism community that's part of the G&I Startups Lab. And then also for members, of course, you can join the private Facebook group, The Den, and request to join our private Slack channel. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions. We've created a board here. There's the bit.ly available, and you can go to that link and add your questions into the different categories, and we will go through them. And so this is the Ask Me Anything part of our presentation. So I'm going to exit this presentation here, and we'll start taking a look at the awards category, or the different categories for questions.
I'll just go ahead and when you guys RSVP'd, some of you sent questions in as well. So we've added a few of those here already. There's one question around, does Lion have any specific plans for very small 1 to 2 person operations? We do, in fact. I kind of want to defer to Chris on this about how much we can talk about this at this point, but there's certainly a question around existing very, very small shops and then creating new ones. So Chris, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is something that we're working on in cooperation with something called News Catalyst, which is an organization that operates under the Nightland Fest Local News Transformation Fund and does basically product stuff for very small newsrooms. We're exploring kind of a structure that would allow this entity that we're going to create. So it's like full disclosure, this isn't done yet, but the goal is to get something launched by January, which would let us spin up newsrooms and handle a lot of the functions of publishing in a very stripped down manner, as well as things like payroll, things like CMS, CRM, email newsletter publishing for $100 a month. So like vastly lowering the overhead of launching a new local news site. Now, full disclosure, there are not a hell of a lot of options in this world. You don't get to do much beyond pick a color choice and put your logo in. But one of the things that I think we're going to be able to say pretty definitively through our research on Project Oasis, which we can talk about as well, is that the lines that are sustainable, that are succeeding, are doing so by keeping a very careful eye on overhead and making sure that they're not spending beyond their means, especially in the very early going. So one of the bets we're placing in this experiment is, can we lower that overhead as much as possible and just make it very easy and very cheap for a best practice platform. So and nothing exists that is that cheap, so we're kind of building our own. That's sort of inside Lion right now and inside a couple of other places, but it's something that we've been working on, spending some time on, and hope to be able to talk more about soon. It is something that really right now we're thinking is available only for people who are going to start from scratch, because if you have something, moving to this is going to be pretty problematic. But if you haven't launched yet, I might say it's something that might work. Structure-wise, it's pretty interesting. It's beyond that for 1 to 2 person shops. We do know that is the bulk of the membership, and we do know that when Annika is building programs, that is very much foremost in our minds. And so the stuff that we're working on in terms of the skill series stuff and the experts network stuff, when we talk about those things, we'd urge you to take advantage of as many of those as you can, because they are meant for even the smallest of operations.
We have another question here under programming that's thinking of turning this thing into a community-owned organization. Do you know of resources that might help us if we move this way? So we have several members who are Lion members who have different organizational structures, and that is actually something we're considering for an upcoming Lion lesson, is different organizational structures and moving maybe from for-profit to nonprofit or vice versa, and also like looking specifically at maybe some co-ops and ESOPs as well. So I would just really encourage you to keep an eye out for that upcoming Lion lesson. Our last Lion lesson was with Chris Horn at the Devil's Strip, and that is a co-op newsroom as well. So that is a member that you can specifically reach out to for specific questions on that.
Yeah, I would say also, Lion has a partnership with something called Lawyers for Reporters, which is set up through the Van Center. You can Google their website, or it was in one of our earlier newsletters. And they're very open to. They've actually helped several Lions transition their legal structure from for-profit to nonprofit, or from for-profit to public benefit corp. So there are resources available. What they will do, and by the way, this is a free service. What they would do is set you up with a pro bono law firm in your area that would undertake the work on your behalf, and it wouldn't cost you anything. So I highly recommend, if that's a way that you're looking at going, there's a form on their website to contact them. Just tell them that you're a Lion member, and that's the nature of your problem. We're also in talks with Lawyers for Reporters to do a version of something like this and Ask Us Anything with legal questions, mostly around HR stuff and incorporation stuff. So save those up, and we'll do another one of those in the next couple of months. But they're a great resource. They're terrific people, and who lawyers are not cheap. So free legal is a pretty great thing.
So we've also got a question here, how is Lion uniquely positioned to become a destination for news entrepreneurs? I know that there are some members on this call who've been part of Lion for a really long time. And so I think you guys know as well as we do, as well as we've learned in the past year, just how powerful it is to have folks on the ground who have been building things from scratch for so long. There's been a huge emphasis in the industry for, however many years you want to say, the last 5 to 10, around kind of saving the existing legacy publications. And there's been a lot of energy and effort thrown that way. All the while, Lion was an organization that existed to really help support those folks that were, kind of walking away from that legacy landscape and really focused on building something new and making sure it was sustainable. So the history of Lion itself really well positions us for this conversation, and our members really well position us well for this conversation, because you all have been doing the work. There's no academic theory here. It's all practical, hands-on experience, and we're really fortunate to draw from that as we kind of design what the next iteration of this looks like for future aspiring entrepreneurs. So I'm sure we could all wax poetic a little more on why we think Lion is the place to be for news entrepreneurs, but hopefully it will speak for itself over the next year and for future years.
We also have a question here. I can't stomach the idea of asking for memberships, subscriptions, or paywalls, but I still want to make money. I need to kick around some new ideas. I want to see what Lion and its members have come up with. So a couple of things here. Really encourage you to always put things like this if you're a member in the Slack and the Facebook private group, the Lion's Den, because we have some folks who've just come up with some really creative ideas. The other thing too, there are some news organizations that have models without paywalls, but still have memberships that are, folks who want to help subsidize essentially the news organization. So it's not a pay to receive information kind of model, but more of a membership model that still has free access. So that's something to consider. And I know that there are still companies and businesses out there who you could approach for corporate sponsorships at this time if you want underwriting for specific areas. So that's something else that you might look at if you don't want to go toward, more of a individual kind of revenue model where you're asking for subscriptions or memberships. But yeah, I would again really just encourage you to put that into the den and to ask some others for their creative solutions. And what works for your community is every place is different. So you'll have to just kind of decide what's going to work for your community, and maybe do some surveys of folks in your area to see what would be appropriate. And if you did set memberships or some sort of subscription model, where their price points might be, you might be surprised.
Yeah, and Ryan has dropped something in the chat, which we have really been wanting to follow up on and just have been inundated the last couple of months. But he and I believe Doug Hardy had set up these New England mutual aid calls, and Paivon was really instrumental in helping getting those up and running initially. And now they're meeting on a regular basis and talking with folks, a lot other Lion members in their region, just how they can help each other out. And so we would love to help facilitate if there's interest. I think, I'm sorry, I say we, but this would really be on Kelsey if she has the bandwidth for it to help facilitate organizing calls. But I think that's another really great member-led resource that is, totally doable for you all to gather resources around and to chat more about. So, we can certainly talk more about how we can support y'all on that.
Chris, we have a question here that might be one that you could tackle, is what needs does Lion see in the news entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Yeah. I think we're deliberately talking about this as an ecosystem now, instead of just the universe of people who are looking to start a site in their community, or maybe if they're successful in one community to move over one community. I think, the needs are broader, and it gets to another thing that Annika kind of touched on in her Medium post, which is a pipeline. You guys might have seen the New York Times themed story that Josh Benton wrote in the Neiman Lab lately, which is, the New York Times should now pivot to saving local journalism, which I think is kind of ridiculous. However, there is one thing that I think is true in that statement, and it's that the reporters of tomorrow at the New York, Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal are the reporters of today at Lion Sites, and they might be the operators today of Lion Sites. The traditional network of newspapers, the employment chain that eventually led people one day to a small, from a small daily or weekly to a mid-sized daily to a major market metro to the Times. Those days are gone. Those jobs are gone. And as we look at the next few years, they're not coming back. And so, I've worked at led sites in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and helped launch or helped work with one in Denver. And those reporters have gone from those sites to the Denver Post, to the Washington Post, to the Philadelphia Inquirer, and are on their way to the Times now. That's a system that kind of already exists. It is a larger ecosystem than just publishing your site. The newspapers that existed in communities across the country did not sit alone. Everyone I've worked for has had an ecosystem that served it, including breaking news services, high school sports services. These are the kind of things that we need to figure out, whether it's technology or people, to serve you all and to grow this ecosystem more, because it is the network that is replacing now as those places, the Metro Daily industry has pulled back. So we think it's a larger ecosystem that needs cultivation, needs thought, needs entrepreneurialism, and the mission is it's a huge thing to tackle. Some of it, which you're alluding to some of these other questions, it's too damn expensive to be an independent local publisher. So what can we do as your association to help you drive those costs down? If that's a real concern and you haven't checked out the expert network that we have set up, when we expand that, I'd encourage you to look at that, because there are people who can help you look at those costs, whether it's tricking out your WordPress or figuring out, how to drive down the cost or of your hosting. It's things like this that, like I said, we're committed to figuring out how to solve, because, it shouldn't be hard or expensive to do this on top of just the tough part about building and monetizing a local audience.
And the one thing I would just add to that really quickly is we are still, as an organization, again, trying to figure out what parts of this we really want to own, right? Like we could go really hard right now on trying to get a ton of discounts on tools and services for you all. And that could certainly solve, one piece of your puzzle. There are, I think, alongside that, potentially much bigger ways that we could have a bigger impact for you all. And so that's part of what we're talking about internally right now is figuring out where to spend our current resources so that it's going to result in the most impact for all of you. And so we're always open to hearing, your ideas about that as well.
And Annika, we have a question here, and that might pertain to the Entrepreneurial Skills Series. It says, will you offer the entrepreneur lessons to current members? We're well beyond our startup days, but as a volunteer-run organization, we have some significant gaps in our basic knowledge.
Yeah, so if this is in reference to the skill series, and please drop a comment in the chat if it's not, or if you're referring to something else. Those are open to members, and actually only Lion members, and we're doing that purposefully right now because we actually do recognize that there are some fundamental, gaps in people's knowledge. There is right now no exact guidebook for how to launch a local news startup. We're trying to build that, but we know that there's things like product development stuff and managing a budget, lots of systems and operational things that a lot of our members haven't had the chance to just sit down and learn, from top to bottom. They've often had to learn it on the fly, and so yeah, that's what the skill series is all about. We're starting with a pilot that's 3 months long, so each month is tackling a different skill. We're running one right now with Harry Backlund from City Bureau, who is digging deep into budgets, and there's a few folks on this call who are in that current group of folks, and it seems like it's going really well so far. We're excited for next month's, which was in the presentation about product development that Rebecca Monson will be teaching. So yeah, our hope is that this format works really well for our members and that we can expand it to cover even more topics in the future.
We also have a question here on the board about going from single proprietorship to a bigger organization. So we don't have all the details, of course, about what your particular experience is or what you're hoping to accomplish, but we did want to let you guys know that we're working as part of Project Oasis on something that's called the Starter Pack, and that will go along with something called the Pathways Playbook. And there are sections in these materials, which we're hoping to publish later this year, that will talk specifically about, growing your team, how to make new hires, reevaluating your budget to make sure you can in fact afford to grow your team, and some of those decision-making trees that you'll need to go through. So hopefully that kind of material will be really valuable to folks when we get it published later this year. And please reach out to us so that we can make sure that you get a copy of that specifically when it's available.
Would it help to maybe take a minute and talk about Oasis, generally speaking? Pathways Playbook, I think the four of us understand what that means, but this is maybe the first time we're talking about it in this context. So why don't we talk a little bit about what we're doing with Oasis and where we are, and when people can expect to see the fruits of that labor.
Yeah, so Project Oasis is big. There's several parts to it. The first part is going to be a database of independent news publishers that we will be releasing by the end of this year. That's the survey that we were annoying you guys with for the last few months. We are going to release a beta version of that and then give folks who haven't filled out that survey a chance to do that again, just so that they can be represented in the database. But this is, we came up with a list of, I think, almost 1,000 independent news publications across the US and Canada. And very similar to Michelle's list, we actually worked with her to design this survey on this. She was really excited that somebody wanted to own this going forward, because it's such a part of that research puzzle. So that's really going to be the new thing that we try to keep up to date over time. So that's the database piece of it. There's also going to be a Pathways Playbook and Starter Pack, which Kelsey is now leading the work on, and I'm really excited about that. So she can talk a little bit more about that. And then there's going to be a class for journalism, I shouldn't just say journalism students, but for students, university students, to learn how to create a news startup, and that's going to be led by our partners at UNC Chapel Hill. But Kelsey, do you want to talk more about the Starter Pack and Pathways Playbook?
Yeah, so the Pathways Playbook is more of a written guide that Doug Smith is a media consultant putting together, and you might know his name from the table stakes operation that they've been doing with a lot of the large publishers. But the Pathways Playbook will be kind of this written guide that'll step new news entrepreneurs kind of through some of the decisions and different pathways that other news entrepreneurs have taken that have so far been successful. And then also the starter pack will kind of be the more plug and play part of that. So basically, throughout the playbook, you'll have opportunities to see things like checklists and guides and templates for things that you'll need along the way. And so, for example, we've put together and we've solicited templates from some of the members for things like, what sort of language should I have in an offer letter, or what does a privacy policy language entail? And so some of those templates that, are just sort of really integral things, but maybe things you don't have a lot of time to research or put together. So we are kind of trying to gather all of those into one place and then have them available, and then hopefully add to this over time if we hear from more folks about, oh, hey, why don't you have this or this? And so that's kind of a quick overview of what to expect with the starter pack. But I'm pretty excited about it. It's a lot of the stuff that I think people, when they were starting out, wish they had. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of good information that even if you are up and running, you can go back through and look at things and make tweaks and adjustments and definitely learn from it. So.
I think these last two questions here, just the new publishing tech and the hosting, I think that was partially covered by what Chris was referring to early on. This project that we're going to be, fingers crossed, hoping to launch with News Catalyst. And so we'll have more information about that. And the best way to learn about it will be to keep an eye on our newsletter as we talk more about that.
One thing I think it might be interesting for people to know is the G&I Startups Lab program that we're helping to run. Recently we announced that we were going to help a certain number of Lions get started, or help a certain number of entrepreneurs go from concept for a local news idea through prototype, and then from prototype to launch. Annika, it might help for people to hear a little bit about how that program's been received so far, what kind of interest you're seeing, and who we can expect to be welcoming into Lion as staff as a result of that program in the next couple of weeks, actually, which is pretty scary and thrilling to think about.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do right now. So we've gotten, we've launched the G&I Startups Lab, which is really a phase 1, phase 2 program. Phase 1 is about the Bootcamp, which I'm sure you've all heard us talk about at this point. This is an 8-week bootcamp run by Philip Smith for up to 24 teams. And it's really for folks that want to take an idea and end up with an MVP, or a minimum viable product. So something that they can create and put in front of potential users and get feedback on. And we're really, really excited about this because we don't think there's a ton of great options in the market right now that's filling that need for folks who are that early in their journey. And, it's partially what we're trying to get at with the Aspiring Entrepreneurs membership tier, and helping support those folks who are just right at that, seed of an idea stage. So we've already gotten over, I think, 130 applications so far. The deadline is Monday for that, and we'll be reviewing those next week. We will also be hiring 2 new people to help us with this program. So one is going to be a part-time community manager, and we're going to create this new entrepreneurial journalism community. So that's really going to be a place where Lion members are absolutely welcome to join, but you won't need a Lion membership to join. It's going to be for anybody across the industry who is even just interested in talking about entrepreneurial journalism. Maybe they're not a founder yet, maybe they don't work for a new startup yet, but they want to get there one day. And so I think it's a really important piece of the puzzle to just get more people thinking about, again, what it means to operate in this independent space. And then the second hire that we're going to be bringing in is a program manager to run this G&I Startups Labs. As I mentioned, phase 1 is the bootcamp. Phase 2 we'll be talking about in a few more weeks. It's going to be, essentially a longer timeline of support for at that point existing news publications to really help them get to sustainability. So it's a big project. We're having lots of conversations with G&I about how to make it really cohesive and get to this bigger goal of ensuring that digital startups are getting to financial sustainability and having that journalistic impact. But there's a ton of potential there, and we're really excited about that partnership right now.
Yeah, and I will say that the interest, putting something together like that, we kind of hoped we'd see 100 applications, because keep in mind, we're going to be having 24 people in the first part and 16 in the second, and we've already exceeded that. And we're still a weekend away when we anticipate more people kind of polishing their work and getting it to us. So I think it speaks to, not just, if you zoom out and you look at the amount of journalists that have lost their jobs already through the natural course of things, even before March, and you look at what COVID has done to the existing ecosystem, I know that I can't make somebody start a local news site, right? You either have the desire to do that, which is a big thing, or you don't. Lots of people only want to work for somebody else, and that's okay. But what we can do is provide tools and training and resources, and so that those that are ready to make the leap have a soft landing when they get there. And that's kind of what the efforts we're building to really mean. From Oasis, we'll be able to tell you those that have succeeded have made specific choices. What are those choices? When did they make them, and how? And here's a lot of the things they used along the way, whether it's a pitch deck or an advertising contract or what have you. So it's all this scaffolding should lead to things that just make it much, much easier for people to go out there and try something. And if you look at, communities in the country where it might not make sense to have a newspaper, it might very well make sense to have a Lion, to have a 1 to 2 person team spin up with 2,500 subscribers or members, each paying $5 to $10 a month. And that pays a pretty good salary. So thinking about how all that stuff works together and what our role in that is, that's the bigger picture that we're trying to put all this stuff together to address.
Really quickly, so there's that last question on how to evaluate and plan for expansion in an adjacent community. I think this would make for a great future Lion lesson or session, and so we'll definitely add that to our list. And then Ryan is asking for a quick recap on we could use from Lion members and how to support the work that we're doing. I would love actually for everybody on the team to briefly answer this. I definitely see that piece that Paivon talked about, just helping share the impact that Lion is making on your organization with us as probably one of the biggest pieces. It just helps us tell our story. But anybody else?
I think sharing these opportunities in your networks, whether it's a program that we have coming up, or whether it's a position that we have open, or whether it's inviting other people into the entrepreneurial journalism community, we're all kind of in this together. It's we're getting a lot of really good attention from the platforms and from the foundations who are seeing what we're doing and responding really well. And that's all because of you guys and your enthusiasm for this stuff. So it's a really strong community. And we recognize that. We know that some of the best stuff about this is the community that you've all built, and we're just trying to help serve. So any help that you can give amplifying the stuff that we are working on or could use ideas on, that would really help. If you've got stuff to share around the Oasis stuff that we're building, that take another swing at that. We can talk to you for that stuff too. But just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and just
sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to do a quick about the survey that I'm doing, which is basically taking metrics that some of our funders and partners are asking about. So we would get into details about Google Analytics, your subscriber base, your membership base, some details on that sort of thing. So if you're interested in really helping us to talk about Lion's impact on you as a member and members like you across the country, then and you have the time and the data to contribute to that, I would really, really love to take that. And it's not going to be reported out individually, so nobody's going to know your exact information. So it'll get reported out in aggregate. So just the journalism field as a whole. I put the link in the chat, but also just email me or ping me in the Slack or something like that.
And I'd add too that we just really want folks to get recognized for all the hard work that they're doing, and to put some entries into the awards this year. We've extended the deadline a week so that you can get them in time. And we just really want to make sure that, even though we can't meet in person this year, that we can recognize some really important work that you all have done for your communities. And so again, it's lionawards.submittable.com, and we've sent the link out in several of our past newsletters, and we'll continue to do that with our members in the Slack and Den as well. So yay, I see Ashley Woods is filling out hers right now. Excellent. Just please make sure that you take some time and look through. We've added some new categories this year, so if you haven't entered in the past, there might be something this year that strikes your fancy.
Can I put a plug in for the Member of the Year category, because that's brand new, and that's kind of, you can nominate yourself, but it's also really super fun to be able to nominate somebody else in the membership who has been really contributing their knowledge, who's just been somebody you look up to, who's been doing great things in the field. Maybe you've had great conversations with this person, or you've seen them interact in the Lion sphere and you want to give them a +1. That is a great way to do it, and we would love to highlight a Lion member in that way. So that's one of the new categories. So I just wanted to push that one.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions unless anyone wants to put a last minute one in the chat here. But we've really enjoyed being able to talk to you all today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. And, you know, of course, we're always available if you have questions or need help with anything. And, you know, of course, the resource of other members is one of the most valuable things here in Lion. So you can always put things in the Slack and the Den as well. So yeah, once again, we just want to really thank you all for coming, and reach out and stay safe. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.